Our dependable Rotis Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. We begin with a report from the Institute of International Finance stating that there have been a record amount of emerging market outflows from stocks and equities in emerging markets. So basically, at least $10.5 billion is what they said flowed out of a number of emerging markets in equities and bonds in just July alone. As a result of that, they're saying that over the past 5 months, we've seen about $38 billion in outflows over the 5 months. So what is the impact of this? So first of all, why? I mean, we should know why by now. It's because of rising interest rates in developed markets, because of issues, of course, with the war in Ukraine, the COVID structures, and so on, COVID struggles, and so on and so forth. In fact, I just saw a headline just a few minutes ago before I came in saying that bond yields in Italy have dropped below 3% for the first time since March, or is it April? Now, if you think about that intuitively, there's an inverse relationship between a bond's price and a bond's yield. The yield is what you get on the bond, right? If bond yields are dropping in Italy, that means bond prices are rising. And if bond prices are rising, that means that there's an increase in demand for Italian bonds. Now, there's been some political struggles in Italy recently with, what's his name, Mario Draghi resigning and so on and so forth. However, if investors are taking an interest in bonds, well, they have to take their money else from somewhere to put into Italian bonds. And maybe you could also attribute that to the ECB also raising rates for the first time in like a decade or so. So that's one small example of fund flows moving from emerging markets into developed economies. What is the impact on this? You know that a number of emerging markets depend so much on foreign exchange. You pick a Nigeria, for example. What are the sources of foreign exchange for us? There's commodity exports like oil. There's diaspora remittances. There is foreign direct investment. There's foreign portfolio investment. There's also loans. So if you see capital outflows going out, which is what has been prompting a number of central banks in emerging markets to hike rates to try to keep those funds in, the damage is there. And if this continues, again, this is just as of July, if you continue to see this type of fund flows coming out of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the Nairobi Exchange, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and so on, it is a problem. We moved to a webinar that was held this past weekend by Cedar and Ash Capital, hosted by the CEO, Kayode Omoshebi. He's ex-ARM Securities analyst that started Cedar and Ash. They had an economic outlook where he talked about a number of issues looking at the Nigerian economy. He talked about threats, he talked about opportunities. One question that was posed to him is, he stated that he believes that he sees the official exchange rates being moved to between 550 to 600, and he's also called for floating of the Naira. He was asked, well, will floating the Naira make a difference? Because we're such an import-dependent nation. If you float it or move it, will we not still see the same issues if supply issues continue? Here is his response.
Difference might not be as significant because a lot of things has to be done together for you to see a significant difference. One, if you float the currency at the same time you remove subsidy, then you would see a major impact in terms of our foreign exchange market, right? But if you just move the currency, what happens is, as an exporter or an IOC or someone with USD, you would not want to sell in the official market today at 450 when you can sell at 710. Now, when you move the rate to 500, 550, there are some official credible sellers, even the CBN, who can then sell at the market to meet up or clear that demand. What that does after a while is there will be some inflows into the official market, right? And then the black market starts to, or the parallel market starts to find its way sort of around that level. So what would then happen is that the average FX rates would then be maybe around 600 or thereabouts. In terms of fundamental, the fact is that the FX is at almost the best level it can be now. It gets worse every time because the demand outweighs the supply, right? And fixing the demand or the supply, sometimes it's not a CBN mandate, right? These things are sort of long-term actions. You have to sort of increase your domestic production. You sort of have to look at other sectors. You have to create market-driven policies, pro-market policies for other sectors to sort of thrive. So the CBN really is just looking at price stability, right? It's looking at short-term fixes to the currency, not something. Most of the actions by the CBN are not sustainable, but what they do is that they sort of impact on price stability at the moment. So moving the official rate will sort of impact on supply. I mean, what the CBN needs now is trying to attract other guys to sell at the market, increasing supply. We increase supply. For foreign investors, it sort of looks at, I mean, if you're coming to Nigeria now and you see where the official rate is 450, you see the parallel market at 710. And you have to sell at the official market to bring your money at the official market. It's going to restrict you from coming in now, because with all the indicators, it shows that the official rate is overvalued, right? So you want to wait for that valuation to materialize, which is the rate to move closer to the parallel market, and then it gives you that, okay, it's a good time to come in now, because I'm not going to come in at 450 when I'm expecting a possible depreciation, right? That means I'm going to take a loss on FX. So moving to 500, 550 will sort of increase supply to certain levels. And the truth is that the parallel market, in terms of size, is not significant. It's not as big. Maybe 20% or 30% of FX transactions happen on the parallel market. So you can sort of crash that market with $2 billion, for example, right? You can bring it down to a level. So you move the rate to 550, you increase supply to that market, just increase what you sell to the BDCs. The market finds its level. This is what happened in 2017. And then you can see the both rates, average rates, staying around 500, 600.
All right, and we're still on the same FX matter. Emirates Airlines on Friday put out a press release saying that they're going to have to cut their number of flights to Nigeria by August the 15th. I think they're going from 17 to 7 or so, because they're saying about $85 million is trapped in Nigeria, and they're not able to get the funds out. Taking a macro view of this, if you think about multinationals that operate in different countries outside of their home country, they are earning their profits in the local currency where they operate. They then have to convert those profits back into dollars to be able to get those funds out. So they face currency risk, and it's two-pronged. The first risk they face is if there is a devaluation in the currency. If the currency gets weaker, then their profits are lower, and they take a loss when they convert to the dollars to get it out of the country. Second, if there is a liquidity issue and they can't get the funds out, not only are they facing that currency risk, but there's also a delay in being able to get out, being able to get the money out, and the money cannot be put to any operational use. They said in their press release that they offered to pay for jet fuel in Naira, but the supplier refused, which makes a lot of sense, right? You see, you're paying for jet fuel is priced in dollars. They tried to look at other solutions, but it just couldn't work out. So I mean, they're still flying, they're still here, but they've reduced it now. The last estimate, I think I was reading it in this day, this was about May, June or last year. It's about, according to what it was at IATA, so about $450 million is trapped here in Nigeria alone. It's also trapped in other emerging market economies, but that was since last year. I would assume that number has grown since then. That's our update.
So the sad reality about the forex is, I'm seeing a lot of positions as regards floating the currency, but Augusto turned out a paper too in the course of last week that I saw and made the same argument, the fact that if you benchmark it, leave it to float, it's going to be around the 6, and then there's a 10% percentile increase on it. I mean, these are very good arguments for where we are now, but the question is, and my challenge is, even if you float it, it's not going to solve the legacy problem. Yeah. Go back to the 80s, where we had that level of floats, 86, and we felt, it was going to find its level at a certain way. But the legacy issue still crept in.
Right.
The fact that we're not producing locally. The fact that it's even heightened now because of insecurity and other parameters in the economy.
Right.
So what are the assurances that if you float, there's not going to be a run of the mill? And the legacy issues will creep up. You will not be able to produce. There's going to be a high level of insecurity, no local production. You can't churn out. You still need more FX.
Right.
You still need more FX for education and other things like that. So those are the factors we have to look at on ground. Because you see, if we were producing a low currency rate is even supposed to be to our advantage.
Because it boosts your exports.
Yeah, and if you remember the case of the Plaza Hotel Agreement in 85, that was what China and Japan was doing with the yen. They were deliberately manipulating currency to boost their exports and the likes. But we're not doing that. So when we make these arguments, let's also look at the viability of the legacy issues. Would you tell me that we can solve those legacy issues in a heartbeat? Even if we take the big chunk that subsidy takes out of it, which we need to take out of it, because it's pressing our neck down. Are you telling me that we can solve all those legacy issues and we can be in the path of production? We can produce power all of a sudden? The cement deal is still going to take a couple of years to kick in. You need power. Are you telling me that crude oil theft will end all of a sudden and it will be easy to get access to gas?
True.
So please,
true.
let's think in line of all of that.
The argument, though, is that in the meantime, in the short term, if you float, according to what Kayode Omoshobi is saying, you at least give foreign investors a clearer view as to what exchange rate they'll be coming. Because remember what the main FX sources are for Nigeria. Oil exports, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and then you've got remittances from overseas, diaspora remittances, and then loans. So at least on the side, you're hearing what he was saying. If you're an investor and you're looking, okay, official rate is at 430, parallel markets is at 710. If I'm bringing in my money, I'm forced to sell at 450. That's the issue.
The outcomes.
True. There's a risk.
It takes me back to 86.
Yeah.
When we decided to take this same measure, we say, okay, it will stabilize at a certain rate.
Right.
Because we're pretty much holding the rates up till 86 January, when we had those windows by
the central bank and so on. But
we saw the problem, and it kept on going. It never stopped. That's my argument.
Where do you stand on the argument, Rotus?
Yeah. So look, I'm in favor of it. Okay, actually, up until I was in favor of a float. I was, and still up until this point, yeah. But I moved to, I guess, a managed float because our main issue is supply. The dollars have to come from somewhere. And we dance to the tune of international investors in terms of foreign portfolio investment and foreign direct investment. Look at Emirates, look at investors in the stock markets. Right now, the stock market in Nigeria, 85% are domestic. The remaining are foreign. They're not trading anymore because they're not able to get FX out of the country. So if you want to attract flows into the country, you have to have, as has been called, Doctor, you've called on this several times, a unified rate that gives transparency and everybody knows this is the rate that we're using, and that can at least, in the short term, Rufai's point is well made, but in the short term, that will at least get you some flows into the nation, in addition to all the other issues we face with oil theft, import demand, and so on and so forth.
Let me talk about the aviation sector.
Yes.
Emirates reducing its flights from 11 per week to 7 flights per week.
Yeah.
Because Emirates has not been able to repatriate up to about $85 million out of Nigeria due to government regulation, I guess. And then, of course, the offer by the airlines to also buy fuel in Naira has also not been allowed. So all of this will drive up cost. And what are they looking at? They are looking at the bottom line. And if the bottom line is not looking right enough in the Nigerian market, they will cut their losses, right? Now, second point is that I don't think it's only Emirates. Maybe other airlines like British Airways, like KLM and others, maybe they've not come forward yet. They are probably also in the same situation. They probably have taken a similar decision. Now, what is the net effect of this? It's punishment for the average Nigerian. The Nigerians who want to travel domestically cannot do so. If they do so at great risk and with a lot of hardship. Spending hours stranded at the airports because the airlines have even said, look, the airline operators of Nigeria, they cannot afford, the high cost of aviation fuel. Government provided some kind of, palliative. They did it about 3 times, but it didn't quite work. So even for persons who want to travel abroad, they have this difficulty now. Flights have been reduced. Do you know the number of people who are having to pay a huge premium to go out of Nigeria to make their destinations? The people I pity most, well, maybe that may not be a popular view, are persons who will be going for summer holiday. Someone else will say, well, why go for summer holiday? Just stay in Nigeria. You don't have to go anywhere. After all, you can go to Atakumosa local government in Osun State, and you will have tourist spots there.
Olumorok.
Abeokuta,
exactly.
In Ogun State, or Yankari Games Reserve.
Yes.
I hope they have not eaten all the games there as pepper soup. I hope something is still there. So, but this is the challenge that we face. So the hardship, when you reduce it, is the people that are going to suffer. As for investors moving from emerging markets to developed markets, okay, that's a no-brainer. I mean, what do they say? Money will follow where it will be safest.
Yeah.
If the emerging markets are suffering, as Nigeria is suffering, as they have issues in South Africa, in Brazil, okay, the BRIC nations,
Yeah.
you know, if they are having issues, then of course, investors, portfolio investors particularly, will hedge their bets and observe. In Nigeria, we have a particularly serious situation. There's election season. If you're an investor, you don't want to bring your money, you know, into an environment of uncertainty. You have to wait, okay? Which is also the same situation in Italy that you cited. Mario Draghi, you know, leaving. So investors will say, no, we have to hedge our bets because it's about profit. It's about, you know, what works best for you. As for foreign exchange, well, that's a perennial problem. I hope we will get it right one day, but I don't think there is any magic wand, given
Complex issue.
the peculiarity of the Nigerian situation.
Indeed. Complex, very complex.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much,
so much.
Rotus.
Thank you so much.